wrong.
Oh, okay. So this is Sal, and Sal brings a strong financial background to the group, and he's from North Arlington, and he's got 2 kids in Key School, and we're thrilled to have him. And we got some thumbs up over there. And we've got Michael Lyons, and Lyons is a little bit easier of a last name, so I think that one, you threw me a softball. Did I get it right?
Just trying to help, yeah.
Okay. Michael comes from South Arlington. He's got a broad background, which includes some work in politics, some work in education, including at APS as a substitute teacher. He has 4 kids and 2 at Abington, so he's gonna be in the system for a while. And they both came with great enthusiasm. And I have to say, they also came game to go, because we haven't, I don't think, have added 2 new members right before the budget season before. So I have sent them a lot of homework. I warned them about the homework when I interviewed them. And then I sent them homework this past weekend, but had given them a little bit of hint about, get reading on the budget, which they both sent me notes back to say that they were doing, which was a good sign, even during the interview process. And they both, obviously, the kids in the system have been following along and learning, but they're getting thrown in right here in the deep end as we go into budget season. So thank you both for joining. Really appreciate it, and especially given the season. So I know lots to learn for both of you, but a good time to join the committee. You won't be bored in the coming weeks, that's for sure. So
thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, so it's great to see you both. Okay. So approval of the January minutes is our next order of business, and hopefully you all saw, I see a chat already. Great. Are we recording?
Yes.
Excellent.
We are
Okay.
recording. For the new members, we do record every meeting. Not that they're accessible to members, but we do record all the meetings, just in case.
Yes, that's the rule in the pandemic. The public meetings are recorded, since they're not as easily accessible for people to walk in off the street. So just a warning that everything we have is recorded. Okay, so we have second order of business is our approval of our January minutes. I hope everyone got to see them and saw that I resent them, because we accidentally included Lisa as an attendee of our last meeting, but she was not an attendee. And I have a hand up already too. Bob, you have a hand up.
I do. We're recording the meeting, and we always do, but I don't see where any link to the recorded meeting is posted. We have somebody who's asked to watch one of our meetings. Well, to watch this one.
I understand. The issue, Bob, is that the recordings are not accessible to anyone outside of APS. We would have to individually make it available, I believe. I've been working with IS, but I don't think we have a workaround at this point.
Wow. Okay, that's surprising, since we're having to record this because of the public access business. Okay.
Yes, and I believe that there's a way to provide access to like an individual person, or to provide the recording to an individual person, but not a way to open it up, say, to all of the members of the BAC so they could go back and look at it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me know, please.
Yeah, it's a security thing, Bob. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be fixed anytime soon because of the security issue. I'll have to take this offline so that we don't take up a lot of time in the meeting, because we have a lot to cover tonight.
Yeah.
But
it seems like it should work the same way as a school board meeting.
Okay, Bob, noted, and we can follow up.
Yeah, the school board meeting goes to the TV. So that's a different type of recording, but I'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Okay, so on the January minutes, do we have any other comments on the recent January minutes? Make sure we got them all right. Okay, if we have no other comments, may I have a motion to approve the January minutes?
I move to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second? All in favor? Either hands up for chat. Oh yeah, electronic hands up or chat. Then I can count them. Okay, great. Chuck, you can see them. Okay, looks like we're approved. Thank you all. Great. Okay, so we have a long meeting tonight, so hopefully, Josh, I'm guessing you do have public comment for us, but hopefully,
Extremely brief
concise.
tonight.
Okay, great. Go.
Just hi, my name is Josh Folb. I will be under 1 minute today. Just to the new members, I represent the Arlington Education Association. I have been teaching for 21 years, and I also am teaching math for Arlington Public Schools at the New Directions program. My wife is a teacher as well, and my son is in 7th grade at teaching. Just 2 thoughts for you as the budget comes up. Glad to see that we are slowly closing this. It appears we have closed this year's gap, and everything is getting slowly better for next year. Just a reminder that your staff received no increase of any kind this year, and going into next year, if we keep saying everything is always bad, what I will drop in the chat afterwards is the reminder of Social Security increase was 1.3%, and that is solely based on just keeping up with inflation. So anything less than 1.3% increase means employees are losing ground as they did last year. The next big excitement for me is the budget drop. And as I encourage everybody, and as Melanie and the group knows, I do read the budget cover to cover, and I will give my thoughts here, but I also welcome anyone who wants to have offline conversations about it. So those are my thoughts. I thank you for the brief minute, and I did see it as an absolutely packed budget, or a packed meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you. As always, thank you, Josh. Yes, we were all anxiously awaiting the budget drop, and I'm sure we will be talking to you more then. Thank you. Okay, great. Then next item of business, Leslie, is your discussion around the overview of the APS central office.
Yes, before I go there, I want to touch on the budget document. We don't have final budget decisions yet. It's February the 10th. Tomorrow is February the 11th. That means we have 2 weeks before we present the budget to the school board. I have a great team, but I'm not sure that we're going to have a document available on the 25th, just because we don't have final budget decisions yet. And any changes to the budget, of course, or the decisions have a ripple effect throughout the entire document. So just saying that as a word of warning that we may not have budget documents available for everybody printed on Thursday, February 25th, or even Friday, February 26th. It will be posted online the evening of the 25th, so it will be available for you to access and read. We just may not have the actual document. Especially difficult since staff is normally back in SciFax. Well, regular staff is not back at SciFax yet. Only the executive leadership team and directors and assistant directors. So.
And Leslie, if I can just add to that, and especially for our new folks, but a reminder actually for the whole group, we had all committed to reading the budget in that first weekend or that first week that it does drop, because our first meeting to discuss the budget is that first Wednesday in March. And so it's just like they say around election time to make a voting plan in advance. I'm going to encourage everyone to make a budget reading plan in advance. And so you think about now how you're going to get the document. And so if you're someone who needs to read a document in paper, and we've just heard from Leslie that we're not going to be able to get the printed budget documents the way we have in the past, the really important part for you all to read before the first meeting is that first 100 or so pages of the executive summary. So make a plan for how to get that printed out for yourself to read it, and then, you know, carve out time on your calendars between that Thursday night that it drops, which I believe is the 25th, and the following Wednesday. So you don't get caught off guard of getting to your meeting and you haven't read the, you know, the most important document of our year. And so think about it in advance so everyone has their budget, their plan to access the budget and to review the budget before that first meeting. So that was something we all discussed for Sal and Michael in advance. I think I might have even mentioned it to you while we interviewed, but something that we all committed to because it's a lengthy document, but it also is one we have we've actually saved those first 3 Wednesdays in March for discussing it, just given the what we assumed was going to be a lot to discuss this year. And given the note I sent out about the fact that Reed has asked for time with us to talk about something that could impact next year's budget, we will probably want to keep all 3 of those meetings for discussion around both topics. But please, everybody, think in advance, and so it doesn't surprise you when you come prepared for those meetings. Okay, thanks, Leslie. Back to you.
Yes, and I want to emphasize it may not be available. I just want to temper everyone's expectations. That's all I'm trying to do. So our goal is to have it. And if we don't, I just want to let you know that now, and so you're not disappointed on the
But
day.
Leslie, if you did have budget books available, how would we know, and then how would we pick it up if you surprise us and it is somehow available and that we could grab a copy?
I know that Tamika has said that she's going to be in the office on the Monday and Tuesday after the budget is approved for people to pick up budgets. I don't even remember what my schedule looks like the day after, but I could probably be available on Friday in the office. The problem is that Syfax is not open to the public right now, so this is going to be tricky. Let me put my thinking cap on, and I will let everybody know how that's going to work.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, so what we want to talk about right now is the central office budget, and we talked, oh gosh, I don't even remember what meeting it was, about planning factors and how school budgets are determined. And we talked actually back in September, those of you who were on the committee in September, about central office budgets in a very general way. And I think that's where the desire to know more about the facilities budget and the Department of Teaching and Learning budget came about. But we're going to do a little refresher. And I'm going to blast through this presentation, and it is an old presentation. So bear with me that it's not the excuse me, it's not the most current numbers, but it gives you an idea. Really what I'm trying to do is give you an idea of how the budget works. This looks very strange. What do you see?
We see a Budget 101 numbers only presentation.
Okay, so you only see one slide and you don't see a whole bunch of slides at the bottom?
No.
Okay. All right. It must be just my screen. Okay. All right. So what I want to talk about is the central office budget. And you can see here on this slide, this was the 2020 adopted budget. We haven't updated this for FY21. But this is the FY 2020 adopted budget. And it's basically showing you how the budget is configured by fund. So we have 8 funds in Arlington Public Schools in the finance arena, one of which is the bond fund, but that's not included here because that's a perpetual fund. It's not affected every year. And these are the rest of the 7 funds that are funded either through revenue or county transfer. And you can see that the school operating fund is, of course, the major portion of that budget, as it should be. And then debt service is the next largest, and then everything else is quite small. Of the funds that you see here, the Children's Services Act Fund, no, take it back. The Grants and Restricted Programs Fund, the Food and Nutrition Services Fund, and then a very large portion of the Community Activities Fund, which is the extended day program, are all self-supporting and don't use any county transfer. And the school operating fund, which makes up about 83% of the overall budget, there are schools and there are departments. And as you can see from here, the school portion of the budget is almost 70%, and the remaining 30% is in the department budgets. Now, you would think that if they're department budgets, then they're just solely for the use of the department. And that's the misconception I think that people have about how our budget works. Because within each of the department budgets, there is, in fact, pieces that are not just for that department. So in the Department of Human Resources has the department that works and does all of the human resources things, but part of their budget is also administering other pieces of the budget that are human resources related that apply to the entire school division. There are, for example, scholarships in the human resources budget for teachers and other staff. Not this year because they were put on hold, but for most years there are, and that's a good portion of the human resources budget. It's not for the human resources staff, not for the central office-based staff, but for the school division as a whole. And I think we're going to see some better understanding of that here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is some individual department budgets. And we're going to see the Department of Teaching and Learning later tonight. Our Assistant Superintendent, Bridget Loft, will be coming and joining us later this evening. But the Department of Teaching and Learning has the largest budget of all of the departments, as you might expect.
Leslie, you have one hand up. I don't know if it's about the previous slide, but just wanted to flag
Okay,
that.
yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that.
That's okay.
Deidre, please.
Deidre.
Hey there, Leslie, and you may be this, so I apologize if I'm jumping on this, but is it fair to say that the vast majority of percentages are FTE or full-time equivalents in terms of just like staffing? Like the fact that the teaching and learning has 11% or whatever, is that mostly made up of FTE?
The entire budget is mostly made up of FTE. That's a great question because being a service industry, people
Right.
is the thing that we use the most. 90% of the school operating fund is salaries and benefits for our staff. So you can pretty much say 90% of any budget that you see here is going to be for staff. For the most part. For the most part.
Is there any? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Good.
I'm just wondering if there's any sort of breakdown in terms of how many staff actually exists in the central office. I have no idea.
There's a breakdown by department, yes, in the budget document.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you're going to see that here shortly. So here's the Department of Teaching and Learning, and you can see there are three.
The same big line that enraged and incited the attack.
I'm sorry,
He
someone
repeated
is
this
not on mute.
while the attack was ongoing,
Valerie,
and while we were still
Valerie,
under threat.
on mute.
And here's what
Hello?
Yeah, hi Valerie. I think you came on, but I think you're not on mute. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Thanks. So this is a 3-year of showing the last 3 years of Department of Teaching and Learning, not including this year. And it's a substantial budget, $62.6 million. But when you look at that budget and you break it out between what is school-based and what is not school-based, you'll see that about, what did I calculate? 70% of the Department of Teaching and Learning budget is actually for school-based staff rather than staff that are based in the central office. And that's guidance counselors and psychologists and social workers and specialists and teachers and any number of different things that are actually out in the schools every single day, but are housed for budget purposes in the Department of Teaching and Learning. And we can ask more questions about the Department of Teaching and Learning in the second half of the meeting. Planning and evaluation has a number of people, but they also do some of the things for the system overall, surveys and program evaluations that take into account a lot of the instructional part of the house. In human resources, this is a breakdown of the number of people, actual people, not FTE, but people that they handle over the course of a year. And this is a summary of their budget and the number of staff that they have and how each of their budget breaks out. So in human resources, you see $21 million and they're like, oh my God, human resources has $21 million. Yes, but part of their budget is for substitutes. And these are the substitutes that go out in the schools. So they have a budget of about $3.4 million that pays for substitutes in the school system. So when we talk about certain things like cutting central office versus cutting schools, and you say, okay, human resources, you've got $21 million, we need you to cut 10%. There's actually a very small portion of what human resources has control over that they can cut, because substitutes, we can't cut the money that we have for substitutes. We've actually been overspending our substitute budget for the last couple of years. Employee benefits, these are all pieces that human resources pays on behalf of employees, benefit related, that unless we cut the actual benefit associated with that funding is really not there that we can cut it. Now, some of it is, a little bit of it is, but not the majority of it. I see another hand. Chuck.
Chuck, are you on mute?
Of course I was. Leslie, could you bring up the next chart, please? It was the breakdown on the benefits. I didn't see the VRS piece that you have to kick into the state. Is that housed somewhere else in the budget, not inclusive of the employee benefits piece that the HR department runs?
So this is just the piece that the human resource department takes care of. The rest of the benefits, like Social Security, life insurance, VRS, health insurance, all of that stuff, is housed individually in each school and each department because it goes with the person. So my benefits are all housed in finance. Josh's benefits are in the budget for the New Directions program.
Okay.
But our retiree health care, for example, the amount that we have to pay on behalf of our retirees, that's housed in human resources. And unless we cut the retiree benefit, that money that's in there for that can't be cut. It's not available to be cut. So you can see the kinds of things that are in the human resources department that they actually, kind of administer for the rest of the school division. Sorry.
So if
yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So if I were a teacher, whatever school, those parts of the compensation are wrapped up in that school's overall cost or budget as you've allocated it, to each of the different schools throughout the county. Is that right. A fair restatement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
And you also had one more.
Yeah. Yes, Nellie, I'm sorry.
Yes, thanks. A few slides back, there was a section that said itinerant teachers, and I was wondering whether that was higher this year. And when we get the budget and the second question is, when we get the budget documents, will we know if certain pots of funding are tied to like federal funding?
So the itinerary teachers that you see here are teachers that have multiple locations that they work at. So they're housed here, but they actually go out to the schools in different places. And there's specific types of teachers, and I'm going to be terrible about telling you which ones they are, but they are specific types of teachers. So I don't know that they're necessarily higher this year than they would have been in another year. And then the second part of your question was, gosh, I've already forgotten. I apologize. It's been a long day.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just was wondering whether federal funding kind of shows up in these numbers, and if they do, whether we'll know which are tied to that kind of money.
No, when you read the budget document and you're going through the departments and the schools, it's only what is housed in the school operating fund. It does not contain any other sources of funding. What you'll find is that in the grants section is where we have the funding for all of our federal grants or state grants. And we've tried to break out like what type of staffing it pays for. And I think that we've progressed to actually where it might be housed, but I'm not positive, and I don't want to say that without looking. No, we just have, let me see. We have it by grant and by position, but not location. It's been really difficult to try to get that information, but every year we try harder. Maybe this will be the year, I don't know. But we don't have that information on the individual school or department pages. I can tell you that most of the schools, most of the federal dollars go to the schools. They don't go to departments. I mean, I don't get any money from the feds. So you'll see the types of grants and the types of positions that are funded, and you can assume that most of those are in the schools.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, human resources, we have administrative services, which has a very small budget. Currently, starting to grow a little bit. Finance, that's my area. You'll see that, I have a $14.7 million budget, but other administrative accounts is 11.7 million of that. And that's all funds that are either designated for something specific that we have to pay, like our financing, lease financing, and our OPEB trust contribution and things like that, or it's division-wide things over which I have no control, like legal fees. They're all housed in that area and is not available to me to use for my department in the same way that it's really not available to be cut. For the most part, there's always something that can be cut. Oh, here we go. Other administrative accounts, capital leases, the compensation contingency. Remember, this is 2020. OPEB reserve. We put in all of the furniture and equipment for new schools and relocatable classrooms in here. Our legal fees, which is a lot more now, and then a bunch of other small things combined.
And Leslie, yes, okay.
You have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a level set. I mean, I understand the emphasis and the focus on those line items that can be mechanically, cut because of what's in them. Is all the areas that you've been sort of highlighting and distinguishing between that are somewhat fixed and immovable and ones that are, more fungible because they're bodies? Am I drawing the right distinction there? That, for example, you were in the finance department, the finance line; those were people, and if I'm not aware that the discussion is going to orient towards cutting, but that's what I'm trying to make sure that I'm following, that's what you're really saying, is that's a variable line item if you had to cut it.
I am putting a little bit of emphasis on the cutting aspect, because I know that there's been a sentiment over the years of, oh, don't cut schools, cut central office.
Yeah.
And that becomes tricky to do.
Yeah.
So yes, there are some things, for example, in my budget, like the capital leases, which are financing things that we do that we have to pay back. It's like paying back the bonds. We got to pay our debt service. Certain accounts are just housed in finance, so the budget might contain, if we had a compensation like a COLA, we put it in a lump sum in the finance department, and then once the COLA is approved, then it gets distributed out to all the schools and all departments for all the people who are in those schools and departments. But it looks like it's in the finance budget, and therefore it increases the finance budget and makes it look huge, but it's not. It's not my money. The OPEB trust fund contribution, it's required. We did delay doing that this year, but 1 year is about all we can manage. So we're going to have to keep putting those in. So there's, like you said, there are certain things in the budget that really is very difficult to cut, where we have the most wiggle room. Even then, there's not a lot, is in the staffing. And being 90% of budget, that's when you have a large deficit, like we do this year for FY22, that's where you need to look.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And I'm gonna run. Facilities is coming up, so I'm actually going to stop here because I don't want to take time away from facilities and Department of Teaching and Learning when I'm here every month and they are here just for tonight.
Thank you, Leslie.
Sure. And I know that
and it looks like I saw
John is here.
Yes, arrive.
Yes, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to join you. I have Kathy Lynn with me this evening, who is the Director of Facilities Administration and Operations. She started that role in, when did you start? Was it June or July, Kathy?
It was August.
August, gosh, it seems like a full year. So she wasn't really involved in putting together the budget for 2020, but she's administering it. And she's deeply involved in putting together the budget for facilities and operations for she didn't do 2021, but she's working on 2022. So Leslie, if we could go back, that was a really helpful way to start, I think, to what you were showing and the facilities and operations pages, and I can explain it in the same way that you did.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, well, I'll try because you'll do it much better than I would. But
all right, here's facilities and operations.
Okay, so we have, as you can see, 367.75 people. I don't know where the 20.25 goes, but we have that many.
You had that many in 2020, John. Not this year, not next year. That was the 2020 adopted budget.
Right, 2020. So we had that number in 2020, it's different now. And we have a number of separate services. So we have transportation, we have plant operations, which is custodial services. And when you see that, I need to point out to you that plant operations does not include the custodians in the schools who are funded through the schools, but it includes management staff, quality control staff, and then some relief custodians who I forget what the exact number was in 2020, somewhere around 14, and they go in and they substitute when other custodians are sick or off or on vacation.
It was 11,
So-
John. It's on the slide.
Oh, right. It's 11 there. Okay, I think it might be 14 now. Anyway, there was 11, and that's what they do. So the plant operations budget would be a whole lot bigger, obviously, if it included all the custodians in the school. They are provided according to a planning factor related to the square footage of the school. Where am I? We have maintenance services. We have aquatic services. So the 3 swimming pools come under facilities and operations. And we have design and construction. Design and construction is entirely funded through the capital budget and not through the operating budget, although, you know, they're provided with office space and so on under the operating budget. And then we have a few other things under it, like, I'm sorry, Leslie, if you go back, I'm going to make you switch backwards and forwards. You'll see we also had in 2020 and halfway through 2021 risk management that has now been consolidated into a Office of Security, Safety, Risk Management, and an Emergency Management, which comes under Administrative Services. That happened in December, that reorganization. Some staff from Facilities and Operations were transferred over. Right now, we aren't changing the funds in the budget for 2021, but they will be changed for 2022. And some of it will remain with us because Kathy manages the building leases. Insurance will obviously go with them. There are some staff and there are some equipment and vehicles. And then there's Facilities and Operations Management, which is really myself, my administrator. Wasn't Kathy, because this position wasn't there. There was an administrative officer position that also doubled as risk manager, and that position was actually divided into 2, into a risk manager and a director. Kathy fills the director position and another person fills the risk manager position. Have I missed anything that we do, Kathy?
No, I think you covered all our service areas.
Right. And you can see here, you know, what we spend on each one. Can you go, what's on the next slide, Leslie? Maintenance is fairly big. We have a pretty large staff. We do a lot of the maintenance ourselves. We do have some maintenance contracts, which comes under that second line item at 2.4 for 2020. And then there's, you know, equipment and maintenance repairs under service contracts, and then other maintenance repairs, roof repairs, and security systems. Those security systems will move or have moved to administrative services, at least for the time being.
They will move. They haven't moved yet.
Right, the people have moved, but the funds haven't moved. And that security systems is really the security technology. So it's the cameras on the buses, the radios, and the visitor management system, which has been essential during the pandemic. Transportation is the biggest single lump within facilities and operations. Staff obviously is a very high number. We have can't remember the exact number of bus drivers. We had something like probably 180 or so in 2020. And then there are bus attendants. We have to provide attendance on special education transportation buses. We also provide attendance on some buses for you know, pre-K and K. We have gas and motor fuel that we buy through the Equipment Bureau and the county, and then we have some replacement buses.
Oh,
So I think that covers our budget. breakdown, how it's broken down. I do have an organization chart for the department. If that helps you to understand the various pieces, I can pull that up. And then we are ready to answer your questions about what we do, how we do it, and how we fund it. I see.
Hello, John. This is
Yep.
Hello, John. This is Juan Gordon. I wanted to quickly ask you two things. First, thank you all for the presentation. It was very thorough. Wanted to ask you about the aquatic budget. Since the aquatic program seems to be operating at a deficit, is there any alternatives or cutbacks that you think, or budget cuts you could make so that that program can at least break even?
So if you look at the aquatics numbers for the current school year, they're much more healthy. A big change was made in last year's budget, under which we now charge everybody who uses the pool a base fee for using the pool. We call it a splash fee. It can be bought as an individual, ticket to enter the pool, or it's a component of your monthly or annual memberships. And that means that everybody who uses our pools, we run the pools, we run the community programs in the pool, which is pools essentially open swim. We run we support the school athletics programs, school swim programs. We completely support the instructional swim, which is really water safety, which is within the curriculum for elementary and high school. But the programs in the schools, so the instructional programs in the pools, are run by the Department of Parks and Recreation. And so patrons for those programs sign up through Parks and Recreation, and we don't see any of that income. We receive a transfer each year from the county to support the community swim. What happened in the budget for the current financial year is that the school board voted to have everybody who enters the pool pay a pool splash fee, and that includes people who are participating in the county programs. So we are raising more revenue that way. We're also able to manage the pools and manage the data a lot better because we know exactly who's in the pool and what they're doing in the pool. So they are as self-supporting as they can be. And we do apportion to them. We don't apportion to them any debt service because obviously there were funds used to build the pools, but we do apportion to them maintenance, custodial services, all of the other things, heating, ventilating, and all of that. The county, when it's calculating its costs for programs and facilities, does not only include salaries and supplies. We include salaries, supplies, and then all of the other things pretty much that support the program, as I said, except for any debt service to do with the actual facility. So we're doing much better now, and we'll continue to do so. We're also doing better this year because some of you may use the pools. Under COVID, we are having to schedule everybody who uses the pools, and that has actually allowed us to manage the amount of lifeguards and management staff we need at the pool at any given time. And so we've been much more efficient. And we will very likely continue some of these things that we've learned during the pandemic, because it actually makes it easier for the people who use the pools, and it makes us more cost effective to run. I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you very much.
Chuck, you have your hand up.
John, Chuck Rush, I'm on the back.
How do you do?
Looking forward to next year, just given that we're still going to be addressing COVID protocols for maintenance, cleaning, air filtration, what's your sense of, ballpark estimate of what you're going to need to maintain those protocols, at least for the foreseeable next year?
I can give you some of the items, and Kathy may help me out here because obviously we've accounted for them all in helping Leslie budget for what we're spending this year, what we're saving this year, and what we may be able to recover from, CARES Act and other funding. So the first, and we, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2022 budget is being put together assuming that COVID we aren't having to continue with all the things that we are continuing under COVID. Is that right, Leslie?
That's correct.
So we haven't allowed for that. Some of the things that we're doing now that cost more are we are recruiting additional custodians to work in the elementary schools during the day. Because during the day, at most elementary schools, unless they're the largest ones, only the building supervisor is working until about 2 when the evening shift starts. And that's not possible to do all of the additional cleaning that is required. So we've been doing that. We're doing actually quite well with recruiting them. And it's quite good because it gives us a pool for hiring new custodians from and training them. So next year, we're not adding additional costs under COVID, but we've encountered a lot, but we've also encountered some savings. Obviously the fuel bill's gone down for the buses because we aren't running them anywhere near as much. The overtime bills have gone down for plant operations and for transportation because we've been able to manage it really well so that we don't have any. But as students come back and we start to do athletic trips and, our buildings are being used more, we will start to use those overtime hours in order to be able to meet the needs and the demands on us. I hope that gives you an idea. There have been some substantial savings, but obviously there have been some other costs. You're probably familiar with all of the certified air cleaning devices that we're distributing. They're not actually that expensive. They're about $265 each, the ones that we've bought so far. But they do require the filters to be twice a year, or they're not doing anything. So that's about $100 a pop for each unit. And I suspect that that's something that we will be continuing with next year, and we will have to figure out how to pay for those filters. Also, the filter ratings are going up wherever we can, increasing the filter ratings. I'm sure you've heard about all of that. And those filters cost more. The higher the rating, the more the filter costs. So filter costs are going up. What did we calculate the other day? About $200,000, I think, was what the extra for next year might be.
Right. Our current budget right now for filters are about $92,000. We anticipate with the filter upgrades to be closer to $200,000. So because of the budget situation, we will have to make adjustments within our maintenance budget to see, where we could balance out the difference, because, we just don't want to have any new additions, but we have to manage what we're, these increases to really have better ventilation in our schools. So.
Now, thank you. I guess that's an interesting insight that, some assumptions we're making about what our protocols are going to be like for next year. I guess if that assumption changes, how does that impact your overall budget? I guess is something, obviously discussions that we'll have going forward, but appreciate the insight. Thank you.
But you're absolutely right. It is constantly changing, and it's changed during the course of the last 12 months. So we've learned a lot, and we're still learning.
No, thank you.
John and Catherine, this is Melanie Bowen. I'm the chair of the back, and I have a question for you. Are you foreseeing having to invest in additional air purification equipment and upgrades as you continue this year and into the budget for next year as schools open back up and start to operate at full capacity? Or do you feel like you have already invested in that equipment this year and those expenses are in this year's budget?
That's a kind of complex answer. So we aren't done with it yet. We will be purchasing more. And right now we're investigating smaller units for use in smaller spaces. And in many ways, the investment is at this point as much to make everybody feel comfortable about coming back to work and being in the schools as necessarily making a substantial difference. What we have learned, though, because we have focused our energy on air quality in schools, and it's become such a big issue, and we have done, as you've probably heard, substantial engineering studies into what we have and what we don't have. We have learned that some schools are not performing as well, and work has to be done to them at some point to bring them up to what we would expect the standard to be for air quality. And in the capital improvement plan, in the school board's framework for that capital improvement plan, we are doing studies at 19 schools of cheap, least expensive ways of addressing the situation, medium priced ways of addressing the situation, and big priced ways of doing it, along with how long it will take to do, because we can't disrupt school for more than the summer. And so those are being put together as a complete plan. We will prioritize them, and the superintendent will make a recommendation for which one should be included in the current CIP or the CIP that we're working on now, and other ones will come in future CIPs. So the amount of work that needs to be done is capital work. It can't be done by maintenance, and it needs to be thought out very carefully as to what exactly we do and how we go about it. In some cases, we may be able to just add a distributed outside air system to get more outside air into the schools. In other places, we may be able to upgrade units. In other cases, we might have to replace the system altogether. And there are going to be some knotty problems to deal with around that, considerations of the age of the school. Are we considering we might replace it, and so on? So it's going to be a complex issue, but we're very much aware that we must work on our air quality, and it's going to be a capital issue, not just a maintenance issue. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
So we want BAC support on those HVAC projects. They're very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I see more questions.
Zach, yes. Zach,
hello, I'm Zach. I'm the student liaison of the committee. I was wondering if you're anticipating any excess transportation costs given the added expenses of the additional bus attendants to administer COVID possibly tests or just questionnaires about symptoms, and due to the increased need for individual buses due to the
limited capacity under social distancing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. And we provided our estimates of those costs to Ms. Peterson, and we are in the process of recruiting those additional attendants that we need, because we are planning to screen kids before they get on the bus. And that can't be done by the driver. The driver's not allowed to leave the bus, and it will take too long. So that's one big expense we have. We put some money into a consultant who was helping us reimagine and reinvent our routing, given that we can only have 11 students on the bus. We already had them under contract to look at the overall efficiency, and then we had to redirect them towards this. What we've done is, because kids are only coming in 4 days a week, we've adjusted the bus drivers' hours from 6 hours a day for 5 days a week to 4 days a week at 7.5 hours. And that accounts for 2 half-hour cleaning periods of the buses after each run. So we've done that. We have a much bigger issue, though, as we come back and do season 2 sports. We've done season 1. That uses a great deal of our overtime budget. And the more buses we have, the more it is, because it's all outside the normal bus driver's hours. And the way their contracts are, they are contracted to work 30 hours a week. We can't force them to do overtime. If they do overtime up to 40 hours a week, they're paid at their regular rate. And then after that, they're paid at 1.5 times their regular rate. So if they do over 40 hours in a week, the hours over 40 get paid at 1.5. I hope that answers your question. It's an incredible challenge to make it work with only 11 students on a bus. I think you're an easy crowd. There are much more difficult questions I was hoping you wouldn't ask.
We had a hand up, I saw. Do we have another hand up? Flash up and back down again. Who wants to say more? It sounds like we have a, thank you, a TV or radio on. Any other questions from the group? Oh, Nellie, you have one. Go ahead.
Thanks. Again, tied to the busing, I imagine there are like significant equity concerns associated with doing this kind of thing, but is there a way to just limit the offering of bus service somehow?
So I can direct you to the transportation page on our website. And today we posted a whole page with frequently asked questions and an explanation of how we're operating or how we will be operating under the pandemic. And the services are being limited. For example, we aren't entertaining any changes of route or any changes of bus stop. When we only have 11 students on the bus, as opposed to 55 for middle and high school and 70 or so for elementary school, we have basically to assign every student a bus, and we need to know which students are riding the bus. And so we don't have the time to drive people around to drop them off at different places in the morning and the afternoon from where they were in the morning. And you'll see that we've been lowering the level of service we can provide above and beyond just getting kids to school. We also have worked to expand our walk zones at 16 elementary schools. We've collaborated with the county on that. The reason we're able to expand them is we've gone over roads where we didn't previously have. The kids would have to cross a road that needs a crossing guard, and we've worked with the county to get additional crossing guards in strategic locations so that we get more walkers and we have less students riding the bus. So it's a very good question, and we've sort of done it by focusing on what our core service is, Nellie.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Other questions from the group?
Question from Valerie in the chat. The 250 certified air cleaners, are they available for the classrooms?
Yes, so it's more than 250. Oh, the ones they cost 250. Yeah, they're right now we've distributed 650 to the classrooms where we had the greatest concerns about air quality. We're in the process of distributing one to every other classroom in the school division, and we are also distributing them strategic locations like main offices in schools and certain other rooms and spaces where people congregate. And then we will be providing some in strategic locations at the SciFex education in our offices at the Trade Center. So right now, the total order so far is 1,450. That's about the number of classrooms we have in the school division, and we will be ordering some more and installing them. Or I should say deploying them, because it's installation, you put them in the room and you plug it in. And if you like them, you can get them at Home Depot and Lowe's for $300.
Nellie, I think you put your hand back up.
Yes, I did. Sorry. I had a follow-on question about these air cleaners. Is there a tail to those? Like, will it be a situation where the bar is now raised and so there'll be maintenance associated with these kind of for the life of these, or after the pandemic, will they just be unplugged?
I don't think we've got that far ahead. I think that they will be very useful for student in rooms where there are students who have allergies, and they'll be useful in in other places in schools. So I think we will continue with them. We've only just started using them. We really don't know what their life is, so we don't know about that yet. But it is $100 a year to change the filters twice a year, which is what the manufacturer recommends. So there's an ongoing cost for every unit we have of $100 per year.
Thank you.
They're true HEPA filters, and that's what the manufacturer calls their HEPA filter.
Lisa, you have your hand up?
Yeah, John, now I'm a little confused. If we've got these little temporary filters that we're using, but you're saying we're going to keep them, why do we need the 19 projects that are whatever they're going to be, that's going to be a capital improvement? Can you explain to me the difference of what's going on there?
That's an interesting question. They are really a substitute for the recommended amount of air changes, and they're a substitute for filters that are under the recommended MERV 13 in places where we cannot install MERV 13 filters. So we really do need to upgrade the system and have a permanent fix. This is really a temporary fix. I hope that answers your question.
Not exactly. So the 19 schools that are going to need, I guess these are going to be HVAC projects?
Yes, yes.
Okay. If we did not have the pandemic, would those schools actually be meeting the standard for clean air for our kids anyway?
I'm going to answer that, and you're going to think that I'm being really bureaucratic in the way I answer this question. The buildings met the code at the time that they were constructed or renovated. In some cases, that was some time ago. Many of the systems that we're looking at are our oldest systems, including the systems that go underneath the windows, the unit air conditioners, which are the least efficient also, and the noisiest. And so some of the work, yes, we would have done, but the pandemic has been a wake-up call for everybody, not just Arlington Public Schools, but throughout the country, that we have not been paying enough attention to air conditions and air quality in our schools. So that's why we're going to prioritize the work. So, we can't do it all, and it will be quite a lot of money. But there are some schools where it is very important that we get the work done as soon as we can.
And so the list is prioritized by urgency of need?
Yes, it hasn't been, but it's been half prioritized, but it will be further prioritized as we develop the scope of work for each of the schools that is needed.
So again, are you going to prioritize the schools that have, we'll say, the dirtiest air first?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Any other questions?
I wanted to pop on because we talked about, have we talked about the costs for this and that and the other thing, but we haven't actually talked about dollars. So I wanted to give a quick update on what those dollars look like. So for Zach's question about, are we going to have more costs for transportation because we only have 11 kids on the bus and we have to have bus attendants on every single bus now to do the screening of all the students before they get on the bus? The answer is yes. And we've projected that cost to be about $800,000 just for the rest of the year. It used to be a much bigger number because we thought it was going to be the whole year, but it's still $800,000. For the air purifiers that John was talking about, we're not supposed to call them air purifiers. We're supposed to call them certified air cleaning devices.
Thank you.
For those 1,450 that we've already ordered, it's over $300,000. And then if you think about the $100 that we're going to have to spend to change the filters over the course of the year, that's another $145,000 for all of those units. And we're not done yet. We know we're going to need to buy some more. And these are all costs that are not currently budgeted. And while I know that we have CARES Act funds, as we start to bring back our students, we're finding out that we're going to need to buy a whole bunch more things that we weren't aware of. So we've been spending money as we should to take care of this pandemic, but it doesn't come at a cheap cost.
Thank you, Leslie.
Sure.
Any other
All right.
questions, John and Catherine? I know we have just a couple more minutes, and I know we have Bridget joining us as well for teaching and learning and potentially a member for team. But
she's here now.
She's here. Oh, she's here. Okay. Anything else before we say goodbye to John and Catherine then? And we have so appreciated you both coming and talking and taking all of our questions. It's been very helpful tonight.
Well, thank you. We've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you both. And hello, Bridget. Thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
We're pleased and we're ready to talk about the Department of Teaching and Learning.
Oh, good. Can you tell me what you want to do? I guess.
Bridget, let me just give you a quick update of what we've done. You are familiar, I think, with the Budget 101 thing that I did a couple years ago when we talked about the Department of Teaching and Learning budget and the fact that it's a very, very big budget, but 70% of that budget is school-based. The other 30% is, central office-based staff. And there were some questions about specific positions, but that's the kind of background that I've given them so far this evening about your budget. And I can pull up like what's in the FY21 budget if we want to look at actual dollars and whatnot. But that's kind of where we started this meeting and where we are at now.
Okay. So I guess it would be helpful if folks have specific questions. I'd be more than happy to answer that. I can speak to some of the challenges as it relates to, well, not challenges, I should say, issues that are coming up within teaching and learning that have some budgetary implications. So Melanie, do you want to point me in a direction and I'll follow you?
So I would say maybe those three things, but maybe start with Leslie. The way you started with John is you brought up the numbers so that everyone had that for context. And then I think actually, Bridget, that would be terrific in terms of pointing us about some of the challenges or some of the things that you are grappling with right now. That would be helpful. And then we can open it up for questions. I think maybe if we took that flow, I think that would be most helpful if that's comfortable for you.
Okay.
So this is actually the 2020 adopted budget. So this has no bearing on what's actually happening right now or what is going to happen next year. but because we haven't updated this presentation. But this gives you an idea of the Department of Teaching and Learning budget and how it's broken out across all of the different areas of Department of Teaching and Learning, from assessments to the Welcome Center. And then the other piece that I showed them, Bridget, was, the breakout of non-school based and school based. Mainly positions, because it was harder to break out the individual area dollar budgets when they have the materials and supplies and all that kind of stuff. But we could definitely parse out the staff to show what was school-based and what was non-school based, and give an idea of that 70-30 split between what is being spent for school-based and what's being spent on the non-school based areas. There was a question about itinerant teachers, and I explained that itinerant teachers are those that are assigned to 2 or more schools, and but they're housed here. They're just not assigned to a specific school, and they run the gamut of, I think, EL teachers, instrumental music teachers, and some special education teachers, I think.
We also have some world languages teachers in the
right.
itinerant category too.
Right. Right. Okay, so using that as a base, I guess we can move to questions from folks.
Leslie, do you think it would also be helpful? I can talk about certainly where we are as far as budget implications for specific needs. So I'll talk, for example, about our English Learner Department of Justice settlement agreement. We're in year 2 of a 3-year process, and that 3-year process is really sort of predicated on if we can demonstrate progress in some of those areas of need. So FY21 budget really had a lot of staffing needs to be in compliant with the settlement agreements. Now that we've gotten our staffing sort of settled, FY22 is building on some of the budget requests that we made for FY21 on the requirements that we translate essential documents. And the settlement agreement really defines essential documents as really anything that is articulates students' academic planning, academic achievement, or sort of pathways, individualized education plans. And so we've really been working diligently as a system this year in devising systems to identify what constitutes an essential document, and then creating archives of those documents, so we're not starting from scratch each year, that we only need to make minor changes, try to have some sort of fiscal responsibility in allocating funds towards the translation of these documents, sort of hitting it big one time, and then doing some incrementalism. One of the things we've identified, particularly as it relates to the IEPs, is that it would be much more cost effective if we hired a Spanish translator whose job really is largely, I would say about 80%, focusing on special education documentation that's unique to each of these students, rather than contracting that out. So that's one way, or I guess an example that's sort of illustrating the demand of the DOJ settlement agreement, and then also how we're trying to think smarter and not sort of cost the system any more money than we need to. Another heavy demand area this year is our transition in our early readers to structured literacy, which is a research-based approach to teaching reading, and some of the programs that we want to put in place that help us understand where our youngest learners' gaps are as they're learning how to read. I'll use as an example, since 1997, I believe it is, we've been using the PALS assessment for our K through second grade students, and that's really to assess their foundational reading skills. And what we're learning is that it does not give us sort of that level of granular information that will allow us to intervene in an effective way. And so we've petitioned the Department of Education, the Virginia Department of Education, to transition to a different screener. So we'll be using the DIBELS screener, but VDOE requires us to institute both PALS and DIBELS. So I bring that up to say that that's another cost that will sort of cause us pain in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to give us much better, broader information about our students, so that we can really kind of dive into intervening earlier so that they can become more proficient readers. So those are two examples, I think, that are sort of weighing heavily on our budget as we look to FY22. But I'd be happy to answer questions.
Lisa, you have your hand up? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Sorry, Lisa.
Hey, Bridget. So I was just in a meeting that had Lori talking about DIBELS, and I said I would be coming to this meeting. I had to leave that one to come to this one to say, to make sure that we are going to spend whatever we have to spend. And if we have to run PALS and DIBELS at the same time while we wait on VDOE, and even if VDOE doesn't accept the project, that we run DIBELS anyway. And Lori was telling me that DIBELS only cost $1 a student. So I know that shouldn't be an issue for us, given the power that we would get in helping students that we would then save on the other side by not having to pay out for special education for as long for these children. There's a win to this no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But my other question, because you were talking about the DOJ, is we did the staffing. How are the students actually doing?
So I think that's a complicated response, because when we sort of dove into requesting the staffing, we had an anticipation that we would be delivering instruction in person and not in a virtual environment. And then the pandemic hit in March. And so that new and additional staffing that we received has been really supportive in the delivery of instruction via distance learning. So we have additional assistants, for example, L assistants that are supporting our youngest English learners as one example of the staffing that we received. That said, our teachers hadn't delivered meaningful, consistent instruction via distance learning to our English learners until September. And so sort of hitting the ground running and learning as we're going. So we've got some really good examples of kids who are thriving in our English learners population, but we also have examples of students who have struggled with connectivity, students who have struggled with access, and students who, particularly in our secondary levels, have had to fill in where there's economic gaps due to the pandemic for their families. So I don't think it would be fair to compare their performance this year to years past and say that that was totally correlated to the staffing. But I can say that we've seen some areas of growth, and I think it's more accurate as since we anticipate being back in school in person come next school year, to compare perhaps last school, what am I saying? The fall of 2019 to the fall of 2021, as opposed to comparing 19 to 20.
But I guess my question was more in a sense of, are we able to deliver the students what they need? And I know we're virtual and, everyone is not having the good time with that. So I'm just wondering if the special staff that we're having that are certified for EL is making a difference because they are certified, which was the hope.
So absolutely, I think the more qualified staff that you can have on hand to support your learners, it lowers that student teacher or student adult ratio. It allows for more one-on-one or small group instruction. It gives kids more opportunity to practice speaking, listening, writing, and reading. So in that regard, yeah, I think our kids are much better served. I will say that we participate in regular conference calls with DOJ personnel. They too are satisfied that we've met sort of that benchmark of needing to have additional staff. So, yeah, in generalities, yeah, I think our kids are better served because of the staffing. But if you look at it, and I know Dr. Duran has included several sort of data points in his monitoring reports, our ELK students do have, there is a gap, and they do have a long way to go as we work towards closing that gap. So I think that's what I was speaking to before, Lisa.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions from the group? I'm looking to see if there's something in the chat.
Yes.
A question from Valerie in the chat. How have students done overall with the digital learning?
So that's kind of a broad question. If we're talking about academic achievement, that was interesting. We presented our first quarter grades as part of Dr. Duran's monitoring report, and what we found was that, yeah, in certain groups we've got increased numbers of D's and E's, but what is interesting, in other groups we've got some increased numbers of B's and A's. So yeah, I think it's highlighted some real gap areas academically. And we have our school staff has really deployed quick turnaround interventions to try to ensure that kids are not poorly impacted academically. I will say we've also gotten creative. So when we think about preparing for summer school, and we do anticipate we're going to have more need for summer school at the secondary level, we are beginning to institute a credit recovery opportunity for students in which they, and this is really the phenomenon of students who perhaps failed the first and second quarter and recognize that they're not going to be able to dig themselves out of a hole. And so they often kind of just kill time in third and fourth quarter without really applying themselves, because they know that they can go to summer school and that sometimes summer school is perceived as less rigorous. So we really, in the intention of both helping kids earn the credits that they need towards graduating, and to help a bit with mindset, we are instituting a virtual credit recovery program that allows kids to work on identified areas, content, units where they performed poorly in the first and second quarter. These units have been vetted by our teachers and our content supervisors. We feel satisfied that it's a pretty rigorous experience, but if the kids demonstrate proficiency on those units, then they can earn a passing grade in first and second quarter, which will then have the dual purpose of not filling our summer school ranks and saving us some money, but also helping our students with their mindset that, all is not lost, that they can turn things around. And so I think that's something that, because of our facility with distance learning, we've been doing it for a while now. I think that that's a silver lining, that we've been able to look at that credit recovery opportunity to help our students as they move towards summer school. And I see Ms. O'Grady has her hand up.
Monique popped on. So Chuck, if you don't mind, I'm going to call on Monique first, only because she just popped on, and we haven't heard from her this evening. Go ahead, Monique.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to add a little bit of data to what Bridget just shared with us, because I do have it. I've been presenting it to different groups, and that if you compare the first quarter of this year to the first quarter of last year, we saw an increase of students who are earning E's at about 1.4% for our middle schoolers and high schoolers. It doesn't seem like a lot, which made me feel pretty good. However, when you dig deeper into the data, we're finding that it's our students who are usually caught in gaps that are falling the furthest behind, experiencing those. So for our middle school students, we saw about a 0.7% increase of students who were receiving E's. For our high school students, we saw about a 1% increase. And when we took a look at the kids who were falling behind, we saw a greater number of students who were experiencing those E's. For example, our students with disabilities had a 6.2% increase. Our English learners had an 11% increase. And among our racial and ethnic groups, we had an increase of E's, with the highest numbers being among our Hispanic English learners of 15% and our Black English learners of 7%. And there are, as Bridget shared, some steps in place to try to address that this year. But I just wanted to share that, just give a little bit more perspective and some data around some of the things that Bridget presented. So thanks for allowing me to jump in.
Thanks, Monique.
Thank you, Monique. Okay, Chuck, you had a question?
In light of that data, are there additional investments or resources we should be considering next year to try to arrest that trend as early as possible before it begins to snowball for each of these individual students?
Yeah, I would say in the at the elementary level, we are absolutely targeting interventions now based on student performance on formative assessments, right? And so we've talked a bit about our reading inventory and our math inventory that we administer at the elementary and the middle school level as one example of helping us understand which of our kids are really, performing at the below basic level, at the basic level, at proficiency, and using that data to be quick about our interventions. So I say that's happening now, but we're going to ride that wave as we move into next school year. It will also help us be able to target which kids really need the support in summer school. I know the governor has talked a little bit about using summer school as a fifth quarter, if you will. And I think in Arlington, we're planning on really having that as an opportunity for those kids who need that intensive interventions. That's true for our elementary kids, but it's also true for our high school students. And as Monique pointed out, with our English learners, we know that the distance learning platform is not ideal to practice speaking and listening and writing and reading English. Kids really need native English speaking peers to sort of exist in that immersion opportunity as well. And so we want to be able to provide those experiences for our kids and in person as best as we can, with safety mitigations and possible in-person experiences as well. So yeah, I think we're using student performance data to be able to start to gauge where is it that we need to intervene in the summer, now in the summer, and then as we capitalize on September.
But I guess, do you see that as a resourcing need next year above and beyond what you normally are budgeted for within your department?
Well, we've certainly put in some new budget requests around the structured literacy piece to use some screeners. And I haven't talked a whole lot about, for example, social emotional and behavioral screeners as well. We certainly have been aware that there's been an uptick in student depression and sort of feelings of isolation. And I think we're watching carefully as we transition into our hybrid model to ensure, to make sure that we have supports in place for students who may be struggling at that sort of tier 2, tier 3 level. And so I anticipate that the isolation that many of our students have felt and distance learning isn't going to be resolved by a quarter of hybrid experience. And let's remember that many of our students are continuing in the distance learning model through the end of the school year. So to your point about, are we going to need potentially more resources? Yeah, certainly for academics, but then I think absolutely, shoring up the social emotional supports that we typically have in place for kids who may be walking into a school building for the first time for an academic year. So,
okay. Thank you.
We have another hand up here. We have Juan. You have your hand up. I think you're coming on screen too. Juan, are you still there?
Yes. Hi, Bridget. Yes, we talk about the social emotional factors around students. Are we also considering the staff and additional resources there also? Is that going to be a factor for the budget?
So we have our employee assistance program that we share with the county has been actively engaged in offering sort of outlets for staff groups for staff to join, and then certainly one-on-one counseling as well. I know that our human resources department has also been looking at how can we best support staff. So from a teaching and learning perspective, we're really working on, I think our teachers would smile wryly if they heard me say this, not overloading our teachers. And that's been a real challenge as far as instructional expectations, trying to help them find a path forward as they adapt to distance learning and then the concurrent model as well. And then we're working hand in hand with EAP to provide the supports that folks might need as they're feeling anxious, as they're feeling overworked and overwhelmed as well. So I can't really speak to the additional funding that Human Resources might have put out there for it to support our staff, but I would say absolutely, I think there is a need for it.
All right, thank you.
Lisa, you have another question?
What's your anticipation of students repeating their current grade percentage?
Right. So we've got sort of two different pathways when we talk our elementary students and we talk our secondary students. When a secondary student does not, pass a course that's required for graduation, they need to be able to have opportunities to repeat that course. And I talked a little bit about the credit recovery work that we're looking to do this spring. For our elementary students, there are we have sort of benchmarks and time benchmarks when we're communicating with families about concerns about students' progress. One of those time benchmarks is coming up at our conferences. It says in our policy that at the semester break or time frame that teachers need to be informing parents that students may benefit from retention. Now, I will say this, it is a rare occasion that a student benefits, particularly an elementary student, benefits from being retained, that there are significant social emotional needs, sort of physical and intellectual benchmarks that and developmental benchmarks that kids meet during each academic year, and the decision to retain a child can have a lot of stigmatization and is not, research has shown, is not particularly effective in helping kids kind of recoup that learning loss. So we in no way default to the recommendation of retaining students. Rather, we look at where those gap areas are and really work to personalize those interventions for students. So yeah. So do we anticipate that we'll be retaining students? I will say we've had a relative uptick in parents' questions about the efficacy of retention. And I think that's because I think there's a concern that kids maybe haven't met particular benchmarks in distance learning. But I think in most of those cases, our staff has been able to, point to students' performance on formative and summative assessments to indicate that they are moving along appropriately. So it would be a rare situation where staff would recommend retention for a student.
Right, but if the parent thought that the student should perhaps repeat the class, because the emotional piece that you're thinking of where there's the social stigma attached really shouldn't apply in a pandemic year where everyone did distance learning. It's going to work for some people and not for others. And it did work for some children and not for others. So that if the parent thought, things did not begin to go nearly as well as you might be wishing, and they wish to have their child repeat the year, wouldn't they be able to make that choice?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's not, there's not a singular sort of point at the elementary level that decides a student's, whether a student will be retained. So if the parent brings to the teacher, for example, an interest in discussing retention, absolutely, that conversation needs to happen. And we need to, as staff members, bring forward data points to indicate that whether the kid has demonstrated proficiency or not. But the parent doesn't have sort of the ultimate choice in retaining the child. That's sort of a group decision.
Okay, Juan, your hand was still up, but I think it was up from your last question. Is that correct? Okay. I think
yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Bridget, if I can call on myself for a minute, just because I'm waiting for the next hand to go up. And you can answer this question generally, because obviously the budget is not out, and I know decisions are still being made. But you have some big needs this year, right, that are going to require new spend or spend in other areas. Obviously, there's the DOJ settlement, which still requires additional spend. There is this question of credit recovery, which is going to need, and summer school, which is going to need additional spend. Obviously, social emotional learning, and thank goodness we aren't one of the districts with the statistics of kids doubling their suicide rate, like Clark County out in Las Vegas. Some terrible statistics this year, but social emotional learning is real. But we're also in this really tough year where we have this really big budget gap. So do you feel like in your, and again, I'm not asking for specifics here, which I know you can't give me yet, but do you feel like you're able to identify within your department places to shift money around to be able to fund the kind of priorities you want if you have to? Or like what kind of situation do you find yourself in right now around reallocation, as well as if you're not able to get the new dollars that you need? Oh, and I think you're on mute. You're going to say something good, I know.
Right. So I'll use as an example resource adoption as a big need, and certainly DTL experienced some significant cuts in resource adoption last year because of the state of our budget, right?
Mm.
So, for example, in math, which is due for a textbook or we no longer really rely on textbooks, so let's call for a comprehensive resource adoption. We initially put that through in the budget, and it didn't get included, and yet that need continues. And so when that happens, we really rely on our math coaches, on our content leads at the secondary level, to begin thinking creatively about how can we deploy resources that are quality and don't cost a whole lot of money, or how can we redesign existing resources to be sort of efficacious with our current math standards. And I as the superintendent have a pot of money that I can allocate towards efforts like math resource adoption if that's not included in a budget. Now that's a finite pot of money, so I would say that we really did take a hit last year with math and with science resource adoptions as well. So that gives you a kind of an example of how do we leverage then our human capital, right? Our math coaches, who are essential to help identify resources that can be either redesigned or reallocated to kind of cover that gap until we can have a resource adoption. So,
thank you. Other questions from the group? I didn't see any other hands pop up during that, but let me check the chat. Nobody in the chat.
Looks we're all clear.
Okay, and it is exactly 8:45. I don't know if Monique or Leslie have anything else to add, but that was like perfectly timed, right for the end of the period we asked Bridget to be with us. Anything else, Monique or Leslie, to add?
Just, I want to thank Bridget, and I didn't get a chance to thank John for being here and answering all of these really important questions. I would just say that at the last school board meeting where we talked about the transition from PALS to DIBELS, one of our school board members did ask a question about the cost, and I think that the staff has been incredibly creative, perhaps in looking at some of the monies that Bridget has the ability to be able to differentiate and move around, to be able to handle in this first year the cost of $1 per student to move this testing forward at the same time that we're doing the PALS testing, as we work with the state to try to remove PALS from our future testing devices for our students. So I think we are in for a tough budget year. I appreciate the staff working incredibly hard to try to figure out ways that we can move forward. And my hope is that we will see more money from possibly the state and the federal government in the governor's press conference, where he talked about returning to school. He also talked about looking at summer school, and the state is pulling together a task force to figure out how they can help support summer school across the state, possibly with additional funding. He recognizes the need for us to be able to offer summer school possibly to more students. And I'll be looking forward to hearing what they come up with, so that hopefully they will provide some additional funds so that we can continue to work to support students who are falling behind. And I did put something in the chat to just share that staff has assured us, and there are several different things that are moving forward to show how we are working with our students who are currently falling behind. That is a very important part of our work, and I want to thank Bridget and her staff for always looking at ways to try to figure out how we can support students for whom virtual learning is not a good match. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Anything else, Leslie, before we thank Bridget?
Only to thank her myself. I know that she had a meeting prior to this one, and she was able to work the schedule so that she could be in both places, and I really appreciate that. And then thank you to John too. I didn't mention this before John left or when he arrived, but John is retiring at the end of this month and will no longer be with Arlington as of March 1st.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we got him as one of his last public meetings. Okay, well, please send him an additional thanks from us. And Bridget, you're still here, so we so appreciate it. We know your evenings are very busy in addition to your very busy days, so we do so appreciate your being here and being willing to take our questions and all that you do every day. Thank you very much. Okay, Leslie and Monique, did you have any parting comments? I mean, I have one parting comment, but it's going to be to repeat myself that everyone needs to have a budget, acquisition, and reading plan coming up, because to make sure we all know how we're going to get the budget and how we're going to read the budget before our next meeting, and to make sure everybody knows where to get it and has looked at the schedule of board meetings and board budget work sessions, because especially for our newer folks, those are really valuable sessions to listen to. And again, everything is recorded, so you can do it on your own time. If you can't make a 5 or 6 o'clock session, that's okay. You can listen to it while you do your laundry, or at 10 p.m. or while you jog at 5 a.m. or whatever time works for you. That's the beauty of having these recorded sessions, but it really is worth your while to listen to these sessions, because you do gain so much valuable information about the budget that helps form opinions and give you the knowledge you need to do the committee work that we do. Monique, and one question from Sal, I think, before we wrap up. Sal.
Yeah, how quickly are the budget work sessions posted online so that we can review them?
I think it's like the next day.
That seems right. I think similar to the way that we would have a school board meeting, because these are all official meetings. So I think you can see them, Sal, within about 24 hours.
Okay, great.
So if you actually go directly to the livestream.com and you go and you search AETV APS, you actually can find the meeting immediately afterwards. It just hasn't been sliced and diced beautifully by the staff.
Okay.
So it is available right afterwards. You just have to go digging for it.
What's the live stream site? This is an APS site, or this is a third-party hosted site?
Live stream.
Josh, can you put it in the chat so that everybody has?
I sure can.
That would be great.
Thank you.
And if you can't find it, Josh's email is on the notes I send out to the group, Josh Folb, and he responds to all emails sent to him.
Thanks, Josh. Trying not to abuse that privilege.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I think Monique or Leslie were going to contribute something else.
I was just going to say that this is really where the rubber hits the road for this committee. I know we do a lot of work leading up to this point when you guys get the chance to dig into the budget. We started off this school year with a lot of trepidation, concerned about not only shortfalls for this upcoming budget season, but also shortfalls for the current budget season that we're in, with a lot of hard work by Leslie's staff. And good leadership from our superintendent. We've been able to keep track of where we were, be able to utilize CARES dollars in a way that can help support our system. And hopefully we're in a situation where we can pull fewer of our dollars from our reserves to cover this year. And we'll have to continue to look at that as our costs may fluctuate as students go back to school. And also figure out how we're going to cover a projected shortfall for the upcoming year. So your work is going to be very important. We appreciate all the strong questions that you're asking, and we look forward to hearing your recommendations and continuing to work through the budget with you.
Thank you, Monique. And before Leslie say something final, I think Bob, you just raised your hand.
Yes, that comment just reminded me perhaps to ask, what is the status of our reserves? What is available from the reserves to fill in any of these holes?
We have, let's see, we have about, about $20 million. Sorry, we have $20 million that is in all the different funds other than the capital fund, the capital reserve. We have just over $33 million in the capital reserve, most of which is has been funded with bond funds of some kind or another and must be used for capital projects. But there is about $9.4 million that's available to be used for these purposes. So if we take those funds from the capital reserve and we take all the rest of the funds that we have available to us in all of the other reserves, we have about $30 million, just under $30 million in the reserves available to use. But then we would have no funds available after this year in the reserves.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, anything you want to say to wrap us up tonight?
Nope.
Okay. Well, then I will just thank you again for helping to organize another very informative meeting to fill in other pieces of the puzzle for us as we go off and wait for the budget. And we really appreciate it once again. Thank you for organizing John and Bridget to come and talk to us. Monique, thank you for being here with us once again. We always appreciate your presence, your guidance, and your input. Thank you very much for all the time that you spend with us. And thank you to everyone for coming and participating and all the work that you've done this fall. This is go time, as Monique said. So please find the budget on the 25th. If you have any trouble, reach out and let us know, and we can help you find it. And we look forward to seeing you all in that first Wednesday in March. It'll be a good discussion. And until then, enjoy, stay safe, and stay out of the snow. Thank you all.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.